First one is, please turn off your cell phones. And the second is we would like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance to this fine country. So Roger Legashul has volunteered to, all right, Roger, there you are. Would you please lead the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, again, we have a great lineup tonight. John Koster, running for United States Representative in the 1st District, is going to speak, and then Ron Bemis, who is challenging, I always think of him, so I'm forgetting he has Baghdad Jim McDermott. But that's just me. That's just me. Doesn't represent anything in the management. And then finally, Clint Dicker speaking regarding his run for the Public Lands Commissioner race. One of the things we do, because we're a complete volunteer organization, is just like in church, we're going to pass the hat. We have to pay for this facility, for the salami, etc. If you have anything to throw in the kitty, we appreciate it. If you don't, we're just glad you're here and we hope you come back. So if you'll pass this around. Thank you. A couple of brief housekeeping things. Take a look at the flyer. Did you all get a flyer when you came in? I want to point out a couple of things. Clint is having a fundraiser tomorrow night, just down the road here, real close by. Starts at 7:30. We hope you will come. John Koster is having a fundraiser dinner with John Carlson, radio personality John Carlson, and that's on the 20th. And that one does need an RSVP, so all the information is on here. But as you will hear tonight, all campaigns need your help. If you want your candidate to make a cut in November, contact the campaigns. I put contact information on the back of this sheet, so you know how to contact the campaigns and donate or volunteer or whatever you can do to help. It makes a difference. Oh, our good friend and member of the Shoreline Caucus, Bob Hagelin, has brought up the point that on the November ballot, Bob, is it referendum 74 or ESSB 6239? Which is it?
Yes.
Which is on the ballot?
Oh, it's referendum. Yeah, Ref 74.
Okay. Bob just wanted you to know that on the ballot for referendum 74, a yes vote is voting for same-sex marriage, and a no vote is voting for traditional marriage. So he wanted that to be clear because sometimes ballot titles can be very confusing. So just be aware of that. All right, I would like to introduce our first speaker running for United States Representative in the 1st Congressional District, John Koster.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. And make sure you get that camera on. So
Gotcha.
I'm filming that for Mrs. Del Benny.
All set.
Right. Okay. Appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. Some of you are in the district, some of you aren't. A lot of you don't know anything about me, so I'll just give you a brief history about who I am, and then I'll get into the issues a little bit. Hopefully we can get some questions. I was born and raised up in the Arlington area. Let's talk about where the new 1st District is and see if how many people are actually in the new 1st. The new 1st runs as Kirkland, and Kenmore, and Redmond, Medina, Clyde Hill, Yarrow Point, all the way to the Canadian border. Most of East Snohomish County, East Skagit County, all of Whatcom County, with the exception of Bellingham. There's a few cities that stayed in the 2nd District. So it's a very diverse district in terms of economy. We have some of the most economically challenged neighborhoods in the state and some of the wealthiest in the state. We have everything from dairy farms and berry farms to manufacturing to biotech and high tech, and so it's very diverse. So I do spend a lot of time driving north and south on the freeway these days. My home happens to be geographically about dead center in the new congressional district, which is Arlington, just east of Arlington. I was born and raised up there on a dairy farm, which I took over from my father in about 1971. They moved in that place in 1951, and I married my childhood sweetheart at 19 years of age, 4 days after my 19th birthday, by the way. And last week I was in Washington, D.C., and Wednesday happened to be our 42nd anniversary, so I had to sort of make up for that Sunday afternoon. But that's the nature of campaigns. We have 4 children, we have 9 grandchildren, and my son, my oldest boy, is a foster parent, and I think he's probably going to adopt a little girl. He's been watching so long. I have 10 grandchildren, I believe, before very long. So I was elected I took over the farm when I was about 20 years of age. My mom passed away at 41 from leukemia. My dad says I don't have any reason to farm. I don't have a reason to work 7 days a week, 12 to 14 hours a day anymore, so it's all for sale if you want to farm. Now is the time to speak up. So, and there's an interesting little side story on how that happened. I was standing there and I said, well, Vicki and I talked about it. We'd like to try that. And my older brother stood up and he says, well, I think I'd like to farm too. Now, my dad did one of the things that I thought at the time was a little bizarre, but it was actually one of the wiser things he did. He says, you know, one of the best ways to destroy friends and family are partnerships, and we're not going to have a partnership here. So he took a quarter out of his pocket. And he said, we're going to flip a coin, and whoever wins the coin toss gets the opportunity to buy the cows and lease the farm. And I looked at my brother and I said, you call it. Fortunately, I won the toss for me, and that's the way it was, and that's how I got into the dairy business. That's how it was decided. So, interesting little factoid, not very many people know. But 1994, I ran for the state legislature and was elected. I served 3 terms in the Washington State Legislature. Half of that time I was still running my dairy farm, so it was a bit of a challenge to get home on the weekends, but it was also my reality check to get home back to the real world, and you're doing the things you do every day. So, but in 1994 I was elected. We were elected with a strong Republican majority in 1994. This was on the heels of the passage in this state of what we call Hillary Care. Massachusetts wasn't the first state in the union to have something that looked like the allegedly Affordable Care Act. It was Washington State, not Massachusetts. They passed it in about 1992. And there was a tremendous backlash from that because it wasn't overly popular. And they did it in the state very much like they did it at the federal level. There were no Republican votes in that bill. And they browbeat their own party members to try to pass that bill, and they did get it passed in that state. So in 1994, there was a pretty big pushback on that. And in the legislature, we did healthcare reform, we did welfare reform, we did regulatory reform. We rolled back $1.2 billion in taxes that the Democrat legislature put in previously. And you know what? In the end, we still balanced the budget. When I left the legislature, we had about $1 billion in surplus. So it can be done. All sounds vaguely familiar, doesn't it? That's sort of the agenda today. And by the way, we learned some things about healthcare reform. One of the things I always tell people, we need to repeal the allegedly Affordable Care Act, in my opinion, because bad policy is bad policy. You can't put 2,700 pages of policy, throw everything in but the kitchen sink and know what you're voting on. Even the Speaker of the House stood at the National Association of Counties meeting, which I was at that conference, and stood up and said, well, we have to pass this bill so we know what's in it. Those of us who work at the county level, it got real quiet in that room, at least for a few minutes, because I always say every great noble idea of every congressman and state legislator rolls down to the local level, where we actually have to try to figure out how to make it work for citizens. And that's the beauty of local government. It's a challenge, but it's also the beauty of local government. We get to figure it out. So there's always those unintended consequences. So they were passing a 2,700 page bill that they didn't understand what was in it, and we were going to get to implement it for the most part. So we weren't real excited about that. But and if there are parts, and there probably are parts in the Affordable Care Act that there was some bipartisan support for, and if that's the case, then it should be put in it should be rewritten into another bill. So when healthcare is rewritten, if it's repealed, which I think it should be, we know exactly what we're doing and how it fits together in dealing with healthcare for the American people. So anyway, I was subsequently elected to, I ran for Congress in 2000. Jack Metcalf left his seat, it was an open seat. I ran in 2000 against Rick Larson, lost a very close race there. And at that point, figured I was going to go back in the private sector. And then was recruited to run for the Snohomish County Council. I ran in 2001. I was elected to the Snohomish County Council in 2001. And I'm in my third term there, the 11th year at Snohomish County Council. Nice part about county government, it's a whole lot less partisan. And you know, if you look at our votes at the county council, you'll see they're about 95% unanimous. Because it's about good public policy, more than it is partisan victory. And when our votes aren't unanimous, they rarely break on party line. They don't break on party line. But it's just based on policy. And you know, we can't punt. We have to pass a budget. We have to get things done. So I ran for Congress in 2010 in the old 2nd District. And that was a very close race. In fact, it was one of the last races, I believe, in the country that was called. I was ahead on election night by 1,500 votes. Ended up losing that race, very close race against Rick Larson. Actually, I was kind of hoping in redistricting I'd get another shot at him so I could finish what I started in 2010, but that was not to be. So, what are we talking about this election cycle? Talking about the debt, talking about the deficit, talking about jobs and economy. $16 trillion federal debt. That's just unbelievable. It's unsustainable is what it is. And we need a balanced budget. We've got to get the budget balanced in this country. We can't continue to spend money we don't have. And if we're going to get to making those reductions, we're going to have the courage to talk about some uncomfortable subjects, that being those so-called entitlement programs. And I tell you, we need to talk about them because we need to preserve them into the future. We need to sustain those programs into the future. And we can't keep doing what we're doing now, because if we keep doing the same thing and expect a different outcome, it's not going to work. So we have to take these issues on. We have to look seriously about how we make these programs sustainable into the future, both for current and future generations. And if we're going to balance that budget, it's not going to be solely on cutting spending. We're going to have to figure out how to grow this economy. And you know, I had a business. I told you I was in business for a number of years. And to me, it's really not rocket science, in my opinion, what needs to be done to get this economy growing. In my opinion, we need to do some basic things. Number one, we need fundamental tax reform, comprehensive tax reform. We got to broaden the base, we got to lower the rates, and we have to eliminate a lot of the deductions that corporate entities have. In my opinion, we need to eliminate the debt tax as well. That's one that I know a lot about. My mom passed away. I can remember I was about 19 years of age, and I can remember my dad telling me how the death tax was working, how they had to take half of everything that he and my mom had accumulated together and now pay tax on it all over again. It just seems so inherently unfair. So we need, I believe we need to do comprehensive tax reform. We have to get our arms around the regulatory agencies. We really do have to. The U.S. House has passed what they call the REINS Act, which means certain regulations, those regulations that have an impact of $100 million or more annually to business, would have to go before the U.S. House and be approved by the House. And they'd have a sunset clause on them, so they'd be reviewed after a period of time, see if they're actually doing what they were doing. But that, of course, the Senate hasn't taken that up. It was passed by the House, but not by the Senate. It appears to me that the Environmental Protection Agency has declared war on natural resource industries. Maybe Clint will talk a little bit about that, but we need an energy policy in this country that allows us to utilize our natural resources. In my opinion, we will not see economic recovery to the degree we need to see it if we are not utilizing our natural resources. It's just that simple. And when it comes to the regulatory piece of this, Obamacare is one of those things I think needs to be repealed just flat out. And we need to rewrite it and replace it with something that works for the American people, something that gives them choice, something that doesn't put a bureaucrat between them and their doctor. So, and finally, I just want to wrap up and say one of the other things I hear a lot about, and that is access to capital. Businesses, small businesses, large businesses having problems getting access to capital for their investment. And some of that has to do with the passage of the Dodd-Frank Act. That doesn't mean they didn't need to regulate some of those activities that some of those folks were doing on Wall Street, but they went a little bit far in some of this stuff, and it's going to further exacerbate the problem of access to capital. And I totally think that the Federal Reserve is on the wrong track with this quantitative easing, pouring money into this economy, buying our debt. Sooner or later, we're going to see interest rates begin to spike. It will happen. You cannot continue to put billions and billions of dollars out there and not sooner or later begin to see interest rates begin to spike. So I know I've rambled on here for a few minutes, and I'll kind of just wrap this up, except to say that the campaign is going very, very well. Some of you may have seen the new poll today, King 5 broadcast the Survey USA poll today, and showed we're up 46-42, but it's still very, very close. Still very, very close. And a long time to go yet. A long time and not a long time. Okay, so it's 49 days from today. Not that I'm counting or anything. I am. But it'll go fast. But my hope is that, honestly, my hope is that we can have an honest debate about the issues and not get sidetracked on things that people aren't talking about. This economy, this election is about two very, very different visions for America. And one vision is one that believes that government is the solution. And it means you're going to find bigger government. And it means you're going to have government-run health care. It means you're going to have more debt, more deficit, and you're going to have higher taxes. And if you want to see how it ends, all you have to do is look across the pond. See what's happening in Greece, and Italy, and some of those other nations over there. It's not a pretty picture. The other side of that coin is a vision that believes that the solutions to America's problems, America's issues, are found in our people. For those of us who believe, there are those of us who believe that government should be limited in size and scope. It should be bound by what they call the chains, or founding fathers called the chains of the Constitution. Okay? But if you keep government limited and small in scope, and you set free the innovation and the intelligence and the ingenuity of the American people and their desire to serve one another, you'll see jobs created, you'll see commerce, you'll see businesses spring up, you'll see employment. And you know something, we're all better off for it. Because they provide the goods and services to make our lives better and provide a future for our children and our grandchildren and opportunities. In short, that's what the American exceptionalism is about, and I believe in American exceptionalism. This election is, without question, the most important elections of our lifetime. And we will choose the future for our children and our grandchildren and generations to come in 49 days. 49 days. It's that critical. I think this election is that critical. So I would encourage you tonight, when you leave here, go talk to your friends and your neighbors and your relatives, and the people you go to church with, you go to clubs with, and wherever. Talk to people who don't classify themselves as Republicans or conservatives. 40% of the people now don't want to pick a party. They're independents. Talk to those people. Let's have a debate on the issues in this country. Let's do it. Let's go win in November. I want to wake up on November 7th thinking about President-elect Mitt Romney and a Republican Senate and a Republican House. That's what I want to be thinking about. A new direction for America. Thank you. Let's see what we've got.
You talked about your hope for an honest debate between now and the election. Do you have any fears that we won't have an honest election?
I'm less concerned about having an honest election. You know what I'd like? I'd like to see everybody turn in their, I'd like to see King County report their ballots, their ballot count before everybody else, but that's my own personal preference. Both side jokes from some of us. I watched races in the past. I'm less concerned about that than I am about having honest debates about the issues focused on the issues of the day. It's time in this country we talk about the issues. Look, I honestly, I don't have a franchise on every good and great idea and every solution. Problem in campaigns, you get up in debates and you ask these questions and people want you to give a 60-second answer to solve the problem that people have been working on for years in this nation and still haven't figured it out. So you go to Canada for ask a question, 60 seconds, give us the answer to this question. It's like, they're complex issues. There's not a lot of easy solutions to some of these, but let's at least put the ideas on the table, have a debate about them. But the fact of the matter is, Congress has such a lousy rating right now because they're not doing anything. It reminds me of a football game where the football season's like about football sports. It reminds me of a football game and the ball's on the 50-yard line and both teams are on defense. And they're all standing at the line of scrimmage pointing each other, trash talking at each other, and the stadium's collapsing around. It's like nobody's moving the ball. Nobody's moving the ball. Let's get into it. Let's make some decisions. Look, I am a conservative and I will fight for the principles I believe in. But in the end, we have to make decisions. We have to move the ball for the American people. We have, because there's so much gridlock, there's so much do nothing. They've created so much uncertainty out there, and then they scratch their head and figure out why business is not investing, why all this money's sitting on the sideline. We need to eliminate that uncertainty. We've got to put some certainty out there for business and commerce and for the people of this country so they can begin to get on with their lives. Long answer to a short. Should have been a short question, or a short answer. Yes, sir.
How's this going to work to fill out the remaining term of James?
Well, that's interesting. Jay kind of put a, what in our pocket and it doesn't smell very well, but what he did is resigned too late to do a special election. So what you have is, you have the governor who's decided we need to run an actual congressional race in the Old First, in the boundaries of the Old First. So what you have is Susan and I are both filed in the Old First and the New First. So I know it's a little bizarre, but this happens occasionally across the country. So I and Susan will be in two races. We're running two races at the same time, both first districts on the same day, the same election cycle. So the person who wins in the Old First will assume that seat as soon as the election is certified. They'll go to Washington, D.C. and they'll be sworn in. And they will serve out the balance of Jay's term in the boundary as that new first district representative until January, when the new first actually goes into effect. That person will, if it's not the winner of the other race, then that person will come home and the new person will be sworn in. If the same person wins them both, they'll be sworn in all over again in January and assume the boundaries of the new district. So it's a little bizarre, but thank you, Jay. It cost us about $700,000 across the state to run this race. Yes.
So if the person that won the election just for a month, and then the other person won for the term,
Right.
would that person that serves for a month get full retirement? Or
No, you need 6 years to be vested under their retirement system. That's my understanding. So, yes, sir.
You called for an honest debate. Are you scheduled to debate?
You know what? I believe my tracker back here, Susan's tracker, probably tell me, but I think we're having a little debate, or at least a forum at the senior center in Redmond tomorrow afternoon about 2. I expect we've got one. I believe we have one scheduled with KCPQ, and Channel 5 will probably do one. So I expect we'll get a couple of them up on TV. So, Marysville Toledo Chamber usually puts one up. I don't know if we're going to do one there, but they usually do one up there. I see the MC's coming, getting closer, so that means I have to move over here. So, if there are any more questions, no more questions? Okay, I'll give you the microphone back. Thank you.